George Marsden's book, The Outrageous Idea of Christian Scholarship, was quite enlightening. I really appreciated how he took the time to describe the descent of higher education from the Christian foundation to its naturalistic multicultural conclusions, where the higher education academia has said everything must be based on empirical evidence until that proved to not unify so well. So we're going to kind of scrap that, which your truth is your truth, is my truth, unless it's Christianity. And then that must be based on empirical evidence. I really found that to be quite interesting. I also really appreciated his critique on the use of the separation of church and state, really diving into what it means to be the church and how that has been misapplied over the years. Honestly, however, I didn't really find a whole lot of aha moments in the book. And maybe that's because I didn't spend very many years in secular higher education. I did 2 years in secular education, and I did feel, back in 2001 when I began my undergraduate degree, that push against my own Christian foundation, particularly in the humanities, in English, in my English class, actually. And then the second year where I did school at Urbana University in Ohio, I really didn't feel that as much. And then, of course, I entered into Liberty University to complete my undergrad, which, of course, being a Christian university, I didn't see that as much. So what I really found in Marsden's book was more of a critique of naturalistic higher education and less of a how do we actively counter that. I mean, he talked about how to counter that in writing, how, our Christianity shouldn't have to be hidden. But then he talked about when you do write or when you do give an opinion, be careful about saying it's a Christian opinion, call it faith informed. And that felt a little bit disingenuous to me. If it's Christian, it's Christian. That forms your presuppositions. That's how people are going to know your biases and where you're coming from, just as you would know any historian's biases and where they're coming from. So in that way, that felt a little disingenuous to me to need to then call, we're talking about wanting to bring Christianity back into higher education, but then discuss it as a faith-informed opinion. So much of the book was a lot of critiques on the naturalistic side of education, but also the fundamentalist right of education, with very little how do we really actively pursue a Christian education than what we're already doing, which is your best work, which is how your Christianity might inform what you choose to write about, what you choose to research. And that made sense to me, but I don't see how that really is earth-shattering in academia. And again, maybe it's because of my lack of experience in that world. I did appreciate his coming back in the end of the end chapter to talk about Christian worldview and how we can really grow that and strengthen Christian worldview in academics and in academia, maybe by having research institutions to come in. He was hoping in his last chapter that we would see a more diverse university culture, diverse meaning not just diverse for everybody but Christians, but diverse to include Christians. So my curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to go look at some secular universities' history course offerings. And what I saw was actually pleasantly surprising given the divisiveness in our culture today. And that was, along with the history of sexuality and queer Europe and environmental history and all of those kinds of history, Marxist history, Marxism in Europe, I also saw historical Jesus, the history of Christianity, early Jewish history. And so there was quite a variety of course offerings to include Christian history. So I think some of his hopes have come to fruition. I think some of them have not. I don't know what biases these courses are being taught from. Overall, it was a really good book. I got some really good quotes out of it that I can maybe use in the future.